Today at 1, we are live in Downing Street. In the last hour, the Queen has appointed Liz Truss as the UK's new Prime Minister. In a break from tradition, the incoming Prime Minister made a 1,000-mile round trip to Balmoral Castle in Aberdeenshire, where the Queen asked her to form a government. Prime Minister Truss will address the nation this afternoon. Well, early this morning, Boris Johnson left Downing Street for the final time and called on his party to unite behind their new leader.
My fellow Conservatives, it's time for politics to be over, folks. It's time for us all to get behind Liz Truss and her team and her programme and deliver for the people of this country.
Well, Liz Truss is expected to start appointing her new cabinet later on today. One of the most pressing issues she will face is how to deal with soaring energy bills. And details are beginning to emerge of a plan that could see those energy bills frozen at their current levels for 18 months. We'll be hearing from voters about what they want from the new Prime Minister.
I feel like there needs to be somebody who is a little bit more honest, a bit more transparent, and has a goal that is going to make the world a better place for this generation, because as a mother, I'm really worried with the cost of living, with everything.
And coming up on the BBC News channel,
Hello, good afternoon from Downing Street. In the last half an hour, Liz Truss has met the Queen at Balmoral and has been formally appointed as the country's new Prime Minister. Well, this afternoon, she will address the nation from here outside number 10 before getting down to work and naming her cabinet. Shortly before she was invited to form a government, Boris Johnson also met the Queen to formally resign as Prime Minister. In his farewell speech here in Downing Street, he offered Liz Truss his fervent support and called on the Tory party to unite behind her. Here's our political correspondent, Helen Catt.
It was an early start in Downing Street this morning. Cameras and microphones from around the world waiting to hear Boris Johnson's final farewell. As the sun came out, so did his supporters. Staff filing out of number 11. And on the other side, political allies, friends and family. At 7:30 on the dot, Boris Johnson, holding hands with his wife Carrie, approached the lectern.
This is it, folks. Thank you, everybody, for coming out so early this morning. In only a couple of hours, I will be in Balmoral to see Her Majesty the Queen. And the torch will finally be passed to a new Conservative leader. The baton will be handed over in what has unexpectedly turned out to be a relay race. They changed the rules halfway through, but never mind that now.
Going with some bitterness then, but with thanks to the people in the building behind him.
The people who got Brexit done. The people who delivered the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe, and never forget, 70% of the entire population got a dose within 6 months, faster than any comparable country. That is government for you. That's this Conservative government. People who organised those prompt early supplies of weapons to the heroic Ukrainian armed forces, an action that may very well have helped change the course of the biggest European war for 80 years.
Brexit, Ukraine and the vaccine are what he hopes will form his legacy. But he has been a colourful and divisive Prime Minister whose personal judgment led to his downfall. So what will he do next?
Let me say that I am now like one of those booster rockets that has fulfilled its function, and I will now be gently re-entering the atmosphere and splashing down invisibly in some remote and obscure corner of the Pacific. And like Cincinnatus, I am returning to my plough.
Although Cincinnatus was a Roman dictator who did return to lead again. Mr Johnson urged his party to come together and finished by pledging his full support to his successor.
Thank you all very much. Thank you and goodbye. Thank you.
Just time then for some last handshakes before climbing into his ministerial car to head to Balmoral to resign to the Queen. Waiting in the wings, or at least on the tarmac, Liz Truss, also bound for Balmoral. There, in the last hour, the Queen has formally asked her to form a government. When Liz Truss gets back to Downing Street, it'll be her chance to set out her vision for her government to the public. She'll then appoint at least some of her new cabinet. James Cleverly, expected to become Foreign Secretary, not commenting this morning. Attorney General Suella Braverman is likely to become Home Secretary, while Kwasi Kwarteng is expected to be the new Chancellor. And they will need to move fast.
Well, people are absolutely petrified about the energy bills that are coming their way. Businesses are as well, and we've needed an answer to this, and it's urgent that Liz Truss deals with this immediately. We've said there should be an energy freeze. We've also said that we should pay for that by a windfall tax on the gas and energy companies, oil companies that have made huge profits. Liz Truss has not said that, and the concern is how we pay for that when national debt is going up.
It's important, as I say, that Liz and her ministers get the chance to set out those plans in full detail. I can't preempt them today, but it is absolutely the case that people can rest assured listening this morning that early action is going to follow under Liz's premiership.
Liz Truss has had some weeks to decide on her top team and how to keep her promises to deliver. Now she is the Prime Minister. The country is waiting to see what she has planned. Helen Catt, BBC News, Westminster.
So let's just take a look at what happens next. We know that Liz Truss will return here to Downing Street this afternoon, and she's expected to deliver her first speech this afternoon as Prime Minister. After that, it's expected that she will start appointing her cabinet ahead of her first Prime Minister's questions tomorrow. Let's talk to our political correspondent, Nick Eardley. She'll be here mid-afternoon, Nick, facing some of the most daunting challenges that any new Prime Minister in recent times has faced.
And not much time to address them, Ben. I mean, the moment when Liz Truss arrives back here later is her big chance to set out a vision to the country, to tell voters at home what she wants to do with the keys to number 10. Now, we know what a lot of it is. We know that her big economic plan is to try and stimulate growth. We know that she wants to cut taxes, and we're expecting in the next few days to hear a big intervention on energy, probably freezing prices for millions of people and many businesses across the country. A really big move that is designed to say to the country, I understand how big your challenges are, I understand that we need to help. But then she also has this challenge of how she addresses internal relations within her party. We know that there are some MPs who are going to give Liz Truss the benefit of the doubt, but we're deeply sceptical, quite frankly, of some of the plans she put forward in the leadership campaign. And chatting to a lot of Tories in Parliament this afternoon, they are saying, look, try and come up with a cabinet, some people who can be around the table in that building, who will unite the party, who will give you the arguments from different wings and make sure that the party, the Conservative Party, can stick together over the next few months. At the moment, though, it looks like Liz Truss is going to opt for loyalists. The people she has earmarked for the top jobs are her allies, and some Tory MPs are nervous that that means that she might repeat what they see as a mistake that Boris Johnson made, which is to have like-minded people around him rather than those who challenge him.
Well, speaking of Boris Johnson, her predecessor, as we must now call him, what did you make of his farewell remarks here? Because he talked about the Roman Cincinnatus, and like him, he'll be returning to his farm, he said, but we've all been researching Cincinnatus, who apparently eventually returned to Rome. So could he be back? I
think the whole of Westminster collectively Googled Cincinnatus at about 7:30 this morning. Look, Boris Johnson was defiant. He still talked about his party wanting to change the rules to get rid of him, even though they didn't change the rules. He talked about that. He talked about the party getting behind Liz Truss to deal with the economic emergency. But love him or loathe him, Boris Johnson is someone who likes to raise eyebrows, and that reference to the Roman Emperor Cincinnatus definitely did that. It made some question, does he fancy coming back in the future? At the moment, he's trying to play down those expectations. But would anyone really rule out hearing Boris Johnson raise a few eyebrows again? Don't think so.
All right, Nick, thank you very much. Nick Eardley, our political correspondent. Well, as we've been hearing, in a break with tradition, the new Prime Minister had to make a 1,000-mile round trip to be formally appointed by the Queen at Balmoral rather than at Buckingham Palace. Let's talk now to our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell, who is at Balmoral for us this lunchtime. Nick, Liz Truss is the 15th Prime Minister she's appointed, but the first not at Buckingham Palace, and I think the first at Balmoral since 1885.
Yep, that's absolutely right, Ben. 1885, it was Lord Salisbury then and Queen Victoria. Now, today's procedure, of course, was taking place here at Balmoral because of the Queen's health. She had intended and hoped to go down to London to appoint the new Prime Minister as normal at Buckingham Palace, but it was decided that it was safer because of these mobility issues for it all to happen here. So the outgoing and incoming Prime Ministers came to Balmoral, not without some complications because of the weather. Liz Truss's aircraft was actually delayed in landing because of fog at Aberdeen. It meant that she was some 10 minutes late for her audience with the Queen, but she got here at 12:20. She was invited to form a government and she left after 40 minutes. And we've now received the official announcement from Royal Communications. The Queen received in audience the Right Honourable Elizabeth Truss MP today and requested her to form a new administration. Ms Truss accepted Her Majesty's offer and kissed hands upon her appointment as Prime Minister and First Lord of the Treasury. That phrase, kissed hands, is a relic from history. There is no kissing, there is simply a handshake. But Liz Truss left here at 1 o'clock. She's now on her way back to Aberdeen and then, of course, a flight back to London to number 10 Downing Street.
OK, Nick, thank you very much indeed. Nick Witchell there at a very wet Balmoral. So what do voters want from the new Prime Minister? Well, we've heard that Liz Truss has promised action within a week on the rocketing energy bills that households and businesses are now facing. But what else are they looking for? Our correspondent Phil Mackey has been talking to voters in the constituency of Worcester about their hopes and fears. Worcester's been held by the Conservatives since 2010, but if Labour want to win the next election, it's a seat they would need to take.
There's lots to do. Things need fixing fast. At St John's Garage, they see more than 70 cars a day, but not everyone can afford the bills. The owner, Matt, a Conservative voter and Boris Johnson fan, wants the new Prime Minister to help.
We're getting squeezed more and more and more, and it's becoming, before long, it won't be profitable enough to even do it, and that's the problem that we're up against. So
what would be the answer?
The government could help with VAT. You know, they could make that easier so the consumer, it's cheaper for the consumer to do these sort of things. It's cheaper for us to buy things. In terms of corporation tax and things like that, is there a reduction that they could do there? It's not an easy one.
Worcester's voted with the party of government every time since 1979. That's 11 general elections, currently held by the Conservatives with a majority of more than 6,000, but still an important target for Labour if they're to get back into government.
Buongiorno, good morning guys.
Tano's helped run Benedicto's in the city centre for 20 years. He's another who supported Boris Johnson. With everything else rising now, it's cuts he needs from the new Prime Minister.
It's going to be like a long list of things which she needs to do. I mean, first of all, is like the energy price increase, but I heard that they talk about to do like a price cap and maybe do some support to the business.
If there's one thing that Liz Truss can do that will help you, what would it be?
First of all, it's going to be the VAT. Like the VAT, reduction on VAT, which will, I mean, everyone is going to take an advantage of it.
Worcester woman, a phrase used to describe the swing voters who switched to Labour in '97 and back to the Conservatives in 2010, could be key. This is NHS worker Beth with daughters Sophie and Emily.
I feel like there needs to be somebody who is a little bit more honest, a bit more transparent and has a goal that is going to make the world a better place for this generation, because as a mother I'm really worried with the cost of living, with everything. How am I going to set my children up?
Whatever happens, Liz Truss will face an almost impossible balancing act to keep everyone happy. Phil Mackey, BBC News, Worcester.
So what sort of help on energy bills specifically might the new Prime Minister and her team announce later on this week? Well, our business editor Simon Jack has been gathering some of the details. Tell us what you've learnt, Simon.
Well, Ben, the government is planning a massive intervention in the energy market on Thursday, which will help both consumers keep their bills pretty much where they are and lower costs for businesses. Now, the options are as follows. Number one, freeze the bills for households at their current level. Remember, they're just under £2,000 right now. They're due to go up to over £3,500 for a typical household in October. So freeze them. Obviously, businesses don't have an energy price cap, so the mechanism will be slightly different, and we're pretty unclear about how that, but it might mean limiting the amount of unit cost they can charge. The second one is, how do you pay for all this? It's going to be eye-wateringly expensive. Well, one option was to have the energy companies borrow the difference between the frozen price and the real price in the market and pay that back over 20 years by adding money to customer bills. That means higher bills for longer. Another solution would be to pay it through taxation. That's also not very popular because Liz Truss said no new taxes. But the overall cost, number three, is 100 to 130 billion pounds. I'm hearing today that the other option is don't pay it back through bills, don't pay it back through taxes, just leave it on the government slate, increase borrowing. And we already know that the Chancellor has said the government is prepared to do what they call fiscal loosening, which means borrow a bit more money. This would be a colossal sum to add to the overall debt pile, particularly when they're promising further tax cuts and big increases in things like defence spending.
Simon, thank you very much indeed. Simon Jack there. Well, as we've been hearing, energy is just part of the Prime Minister's daunting in-tray. Among the challenges, other challenges that she faces are trying to restore power sharing at Stormont after the Northern Ireland executive collapsed earlier this year, and sorting out the trading arrangements in the wake of Brexit. Well, our Ireland correspondent, Emma Vardy, has this report.
Dealing with the unique politics on this small part of the UK has long been a challenge for British Prime Ministers, and Liz Truss will be landing here at a critical time.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Belfast. And if anyone is feeling apprehensive, put on the flak jacket, which you will find under your seat.
She'll need to try to broker a new political peace between highly polarised parties and repair the British and Irish relationship, which Brexit has taken on a bumpy ride.
Only joking, folks, about the flak jacket.
Peace walls still divide unionist and nationalist communities, and getting a government back for Northern Ireland means restoring a partnership between political parties on both sides.
My name is Elsie Kirkpatrick. With the centre, we have been a cross-community for 20 years to let people know that there's not this hatred of Catholics or Protestants.
Until the fallout over Brexit, Sinn Féin and the Democratic Unionists had been sharing power together. But since February, that delicate dance has been on hold. If the politicians aren't getting on at Stormont, does that mean people don't get on in communities?
No. We're all very, very friendly. It's very, very sad. They're treating the country the way they are. They can't agree, so we're the sufferers.
I don't think Sinn Féin and the DUP will ever agree. And they're dividing the people.
Brexit's raised new tensions over old divides.
Some people want to be Irish and the like of ourselves. Well, we're happy enough the way we're living. How it'll ever end, I don't know.
The focus of the breakdown in government is here. Our agreement with the EU created barriers to goods coming over from Britain. Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionists say they won't go back into government until the arrangements are scrapped. So it can now take almost twice as long for goods to get to Northern Ireland?
Yes, it can. Things haven't got any better. In actual fact, things have got worse.
While a majority of Northern Ireland's politicians want to keep the EU's arrangements, unionists are urging Liz Truss to push ahead with controversial plans to change the rules.
Our message is put that at the #1 priority in your in-tray and free up the movement of goods from GB to Northern Ireland.
And at Stormont, she'll have to navigate a new dynamic, because Sinn Féin, the hardline Republicans, have now become Stormont's largest party and don't want Northern Ireland's future to be within the UK at all.
Very frustrating. Doesn't matter what side of the divide you're on. They're walking into a nightmare.
Through its troubled history, Prime Ministers have always hoped their visits here will be remembered for peace building and progress. And with the current crisis, That's as big a challenge as ever when Liz Truss arrives. Emma Vardy, BBC News, Belfast.
Well, meanwhile in Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon has said she will attempt to build a good working relationship with Liz Truss, despite their political differences. This afternoon, the First Minister will be setting out her government's plans for the year ahead. Now, she has said her priority will be trying to help people through what she has called the coming humanitarian crisis. Let's get the latest from our Scotland correspondent, Lorna Gordon, who's at Holyrood. Lorna, what are relations likely to be like between Liz Truss and Nicola Sturgeon?
Well, Ben, they are far apart politically, most obviously in the area of Scotland's constitutional future. There's a big hearing at the Supreme Court next month to hear arguments about whether or not the Parliament here has the powers to legislate for a second referendum on Scottish independence, which Nicola Sturgeon has said she would like to hold next October. Liz Truss, of course, during her campaigning said no, no, no to the idea of a second vote on Scottish independence. And the mood music from her camp has been quite robust on this issue. And then, of course, you've got this cost of living crisis which everyone is facing. Now, Nicola Sturgeon will stand up in the Parliament here in about an hour's time to detail what the powers that her Parliament has to try and mitigate the pressures people are facing. The BBC understands she'll announce a rent freeze to both private and public rental properties to help those struggling with bills. There'll also be an expansion of the child payment system. That will be confirmed this afternoon. That's a payment that's unique to Scotland to help families on benefits and low incomes. It'll be expanded to all children under 16 and also raised to £25 from £20 a week. But Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister, will also call on Liz Truss to use the big levers that the UK government has at its disposal to help in the reserved areas like energy and fiscal policy. And on that, as we've been hearing, the Prime Minister will set out her plans this afternoon and in the days ahead.
All right, Lorna, thank you very much indeed. Lorna Gordon reporting. Well, away from politics, let's take a look at some of the day's other news now. And the father of Olivia Pratt-Corbell has said her death cannot be in vain, as he appealed for anyone with information on her shooting to come forward. Olivia was shot dead at her home in Liverpool. Her father described her as a real bright spark who loved to laugh. Our correspondent Nick Garnett is in Liverpool for us this lunchtime. Nick.
This is the first time we've heard from Olivia's father, John Francis, and the first video we've seen of his daughter, who was killed 2 weeks ago today. The video from his mobile phone was filmed at the Christmas market in Liverpool city centre last year. The two of them went on fairground rides, cuddling and laughing throughout. In a statement released through Merseyside Police, Olivia's father described his little girl as a real bright spark who loved to laugh. He went on to say, "Words can't express the pain we're going through after Olivia was so cruelly snatched away from us. Those responsible need to know what they have done. Olivia's death cannot be in vain." Now, detectives have been given further time to continue questioning 4 men arrested in the last few days. A 34-year-old man arrested on suspicion of murder, along with 3 other men who are held on suspicion of assisting an offender. More flowers have been laid behind me in her memory, and Olivia's friends have returned to school after the summer holidays, the first time they've been together since her death. They're receiving specialist support in the school, as are her teachers.
OK, Nick, thank you very much. Nick Garnett there in Liverpool. Police in Canada say that one of the men suspected of stabbing 10 people to death in the province of Saskatchewan has been found dead. But Damien Sanderson's brother, Miles, is still on the run. Azadeh Mashiri has this report.
A manhunt is underway in Canada after 2 brothers were suspected of stabbing several people to death and injuring others in the province of Saskatchewan during a Labour Day weekend rampage. As the search continues, the police delivered a significant update. One of the brothers, Damien Sanderson, was found dead.
His body was located outdoors in a heavily grassed area in proximity to a house that was being examined. We can confirm he has visible injuries. These injuries are not believed to be self-inflicted at this point.
Authorities went on to warn that the other suspect, Miles Sanderson, is still at large and still a threat to the public. First, police received reports of a stabbing in James Smith Cree Nation, an Indigenous community. But soon more reports came in of victims in the nearby town of Weldon. The suspects have now been charged with first-degree murder for one of the worst mass killings in Canada's history.
Saskatchewanians and Canadians will do what we always do in times of difficulty and anguish. We'll be there for each other. Be there for our neighbors, lean on each other, help grieve and help heal.
As the manhunt extends into another day, officials have asked the community to stay alert for signs of the remaining suspect, as a state of emergency is declared in the province. Azadeh Mashiri, BBC News.
A man has been shot dead by police in South London. The Metropolitan Police said the man in his 20s was killed by armed officers after a car chase. He died in hospital shortly afterwards. The independent police watchdog has launched an investigation. Tens of thousands of firefighters and control room staff across the UK will be balloted for strikes in a dispute over pay. The Fire Brigades Union said there was huge anger among its members after they were offered a 2% pay rise. The ballot is expected to be held in 5 weeks' time. Football now, and Wales's women's team have a chance of reaching the World Cup playoffs against Slovenia later on in what is the biggest match in their history. They've never qualified for a major tournament, and they'll see a record attendance at the Cardiff City Stadium, nearly 12,000 fans. That's more than double their previous record. All they need is a draw, just a point to get to the next stage after beating Greece last Friday.
I have the staff having the team is something that we've had from day one. So game 10 doesn't excite me any more than any of the others did, because we do very much focus on what we need to do to perform, and that's really important to us. So I'm happy to, I'm happy that if the fans think that, then they can get excited around that. But I'm very much focused on what I want this team to do, and it's to do the best they can so that we can qualify for tournaments consistently, because that's what we need to do.
Tennis now, and Rafael Nadal says he's not sure when he'll be back on court after his fourth-round defeat at the US Open to Francis Tiafoe. Nadal has struggled since he was forced to withdraw from the semi-finals of Wimbledon due to injury, while our sports correspondent Andy Swiss has more.
But Nadal, rememberingly, he threatened a thrilling comeback.
Can you believe it? When I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna try to be ready mentally. When I feel that I will be ready to compete again, I will.
But the most frustrated man of the day? Well, probably Cameron Norrie, as he was beaten by Andrei Rublev. His hopes, and with it Britain's hopes in the singles, ending in disappointment. Andy Swiss, BBC News.
Well, Liz Truss on her way back here to Downing Street this afternoon. There's going to be some rain, we are told. It's certainly raining very heavily in Balmoral. Let's get the latest weather forecast for the whole of the UK from Nick Miller.
Ben, we are keeping a very close eye on the radar picture. We'll get to that in just a moment. We, of course, are dodging the downpours again. Some spectacular views coming in from our weather watchers. This shelf cloud has captured in Dorset yesterday evening. Another line of torrential, thundery rain was moving in then. All of these tending to move their way northwards with the flow at the moment. This is the radar picture so far today. This is why it's been so very wet in Balmoral. We're also seeing some thunderstorms popping up in northeast England. We've had a few in the southwest as well, all connected to an area of low pressure. It is still here like a washing machine, spinning around it, bands of heavy rain and showers, and we are on rinse and repeat until that finally moves away. That's not going to be until the weekend. Until then, batches of heavy and at times thundery rain. Here's one, here's another, tending to move southwest to northeast. It does mean as they're moving that Balmoral should see something drier as the afternoon goes on. But look what happens into the central belt late afternoon, early evening. This could create some difficult travel conditions. Showers rather more scattered into Northern Ireland. And a few batches are working their way from west to east through England and Wales. Now, we are watching a cluster looking to be heading towards the London area. Of course, all eyes on Downing Street this afternoon. There's a question mark to the degree to which they're going to move in, or perhaps just miss to the northwest. Keep the umbrella handy. There are some warm, sunny spells around some of these downpours once they've moved on through. Some will continue overnight in Scotland, for example. Another area moving from the southwest into England and Wales may not be as lively as recent nights, but still the chance you could be woken by a rumble of thunder, mild, humid overnight. into tomorrow then, and a few areas of heavy rain still moving through Scotland. The showers break out elsewhere. There'll be gaps allowing some pleasantly warm sunny spells, but if you catch a shower, it could be heavy, thundery as well. Still quite windy down towards the southwest, closer to this area of low pressure, and temperatures will start to just edge down a little bit during the second half of the week. It'll feel just a touch fresher. The mornings might give some mist and fog patches. By day, well, this is Thursday, there are a rash of showers around, but again, there are gaps. Some places inevitably missing the showers and staying dry with some sunny spells. Now, here's that area of low pressure again. It does move across us, and by the weekend is moving away. And we're into a gap between weather systems that allows something drier this weekend before low pressure looks like it's going to move back in at the start of the following week. So a few city forecasts then into the weekend. You'll notice it does look a bit drier at this stage. We are at least topping up some of the rainfall totals. But for now, Ben, keep the umbrella handy.
I've got it here, Nick. Thank you very much indeed. Let's take you back to the main story of the day, the appointment of the country's new Prime Minister, Liz Truss. Nick Eardley is with me now. Nick, she is, the fourth Prime Minister in the last 6 years. She's already talked about fighting and winning the next general election.
It's been a turbulent old time, hasn't it, Ben? It feels like we're here more and more often waiting for a new Prime Minister to sign in. Look, I think that the feeling in her party is that Liz Truss has to get the next few days and the next few weeks right. And that will mean that this energy plan that we heard about from Simon earlier is going to be absolutely crucial. There is a view in the Conservative Party that if they get it right, and most agree that freezing prices is a way of getting it right, then potentially Liz Truss can get back on the front foot, talk about the wider economy and talk about some of her other plans for government. You hear Labour, the Liberal Democrats and the SNP all saying that her plans don't go far enough and that she should be introducing a new windfall tax to pay for a price freeze. But if she does go ahead with that in the next couple of days and she does start to set out that wider vision, the hope that Team Truss have is that she can spend the next couple of years showing that the Conservative Party still have something to offer the country. But look, she comes in here at a really daunting time with her party behind in the polls, big questions over the economy, big questions over industrial relations and over the cost of living. None of the answers are simple.
Indeed. Nick, thank you very much indeed. Nick Eardley, our political correspondent. Another day of huge political significance here in Downing Street. And a reminder of our top story then this lunchtime. The Queen has appointed Liz Truss as the United Kingdom's new Prime Minister. In a break from tradition, the incoming Prime Minister made a 1,000-mile round trip to Balmoral Castle in Aberdeenshire, where the Queen asked her to form a government. That's it from me. That is it from the BBC News at 1. So it's goodbye from me here in Downing Street, outside number 10. And on BBC One, we'll now join the BBC's news teams where you are. Have a very good afternoon.